There's been three major changes in the contact center in the last few years. Number one was the migration from call centers, which are phone only, to contact centers, which is multiple channels. Number two was the actual integration of these multiple channels into a centralized multi-channel contact center. And number three was the evolution of the multi-channel contact center to the cross-channel contact center, where the channel becomes irrelevant and it's just interaction that matters.
Over the last few years, I think the contact center has had to change and adapt to a big shift in the way the customers engage. I think the phone is still a massive channel. But what's happened is when they were first formed, contact centers were much more factory-based. They were just ways of doing economies of scale for all the basic customer service transactions. Most of the simple transactions can now be done in easier places, so online or mobile, which means that the contact center is really having to deal with those problems that fit slightly outside the process, or they fit in more exceptional, more complex circumstances, which actually means that the agent in the center has actually got to be able to handle a much wider range of problems, be able to interact with exceptions, and pull all those things together. And I think contact centers now have to deliver a much more engaging experience. I think they're a much more key part of the experience. They're not just saying, what is my bank balance? But you're now saying, how do I do a foreign transfer of these funds in the cheapest way between these accounts? You're asking a much more complex inquiry. And I think the second thing is that the contact center is now part of a multi-channel world. And I think it's a critical cornerstone of that world. I think it's able to add value into all the other channels and also be the place in which those things that filter up as harder or difficult or less appropriate in other channels come up to the contact center. And therefore, I think the agent needs to be able to do more and more.
So major changes in the contact center. I think you have to answer that question looking at it from a customer's perspective. And what I see is more and more contact centers are focused on being able to provide an optimal customer experience that's in line with a company's brand. And what does that mean? Is that contact centers need to provide a consistent experience every time a customer interacts with them over all the communication channels that they support: voice, electronic, and social.
Organizations who are looking to modernize their contact center are challenged by culture and technology. The first part of culture is that they have people that want to grasp a hold and feel that because they're social by nature, they want to just simply reach out and have many different conversations with people that are reaching out to an organization or to a brand. So somebody would respond to somebody on Twitter. It might be a PR person, it could be a marketing person, it could actually be somebody in customer service. These are good starts in experimentation, but what's really important is to coordinate the efforts and to think through how these kinds of efforts can best be done by an organization from a strategic perspective. The second part is actually the technology that can enable this coordinated response. Some people that are doing this kind of work live within the organization. Some people live outside of the organization. They may be your PR agency or your marketing agency. The contact center may or may not be aware of who's doing this kind of work. If a customer sends a Twitter response to something that the brand requests, it may be received by somebody within the organization, but it could be easily received by somebody outside the organization. If you send a complaint to somebody to a brand, my bank account is wrong, my service is down, the contact center may not be aware when they pick up the phone and call you to complain about the same thing.
There's not a single organization that does things the same way. So there's many different lessons that we learn. There's many different techniques that they use. So for example, to go from call center to contact center, the initial reaction was just to put people to do it. And slowly we learned that what we have to do is get the right people with the right skill sets and manage it differently. The metrics that we use are differently. The HR policies that we use are different. The training is going to be different. So that's how we started learning how to move from a call center to a contact center. Moving from a single channel contact center to a multi-channel contact center became more an issue of finding the common components that you could leverage from one to the next one. So we didn't care as much about the people. We knew we had the right people. We knew they had the right training techniques, but we need to find the common components we could leverage evolving from one to the next one. Now, the one that is more in the air at this time is moving from a multi-channel contact center to a cross-channel contact center, because we really don't know what we're doing there yet. We know that we want to be able to go end what we call channel hopping. So we don't want a customer to go from one channel to the next one and have to start the whole interaction again. So if you go online and you give us your information, we want to be able to pick up the phone and continue the conversation, which is the definition of cross-channel. We just don't know what we're doing there yet. So the initial step that we're taking is finding a way to do a reporting across all channels for a single interaction. And as we start mastering that art, then we start looking for ways to make that better using technology in different ways.
One of the challenges that we've seen is if you're looking to modernize the contact center, is that historically the contact center has been assembled and driven and taken forward really from a cost efficiency route, i.e. how can you do it as cheaply as possible? There's been little thought given to exactly how it becomes an asset to the customer experience. It's almost been, what's the cheapest, fastest way of doing this, rather than the best way of doing this, or how can it add? So I think there is a cultural shift required for organizations to actually understand that the contact center is able to engage the customer in a unique way and say, how does that add value across all the points of customer experience that it can touch? And looking at how you look at consistency and proactive experience as well as reactive experience. And I think the second thing is the whole area of budget, is that historically, I think in the last 2 to 3 years, contact centers have not been viewed as the sexy thing or the cool thing, whereas actually they're still the primary means of servicing most customers in most organizations, and therefore they need to be put back on the list of things to invest in. And I think within that is people have actually started to put the contact center in the too hard basket. They've had a contact center for 10 years or 15 years, and it's always had problems, it's always had challenges, it's never been a great experience for the customers. And I think they've almost given up on being able to solve that, whereas I think a well-run, well-designed contact center can provide the best experiences for a customer.
And what's very important is to be able to staff and to fund any type of contact center initiative, is to be able to translate the high-level business outcomes to the operational details, the attention to technology, to business processes, to organizational change and staffing that's needed to support the high-level business outcomes.
In the modern contact center, the telephone plays a critical role, and it has not gone away, and it is not going to go away anytime soon. When people have a problem that needs to be escalated, they are frustrated, they may shout on social channels, they may express their frustration on social channels, but when push comes to shove and they need an answer, whether it's a financial institution, a service provider of telephone services or cable services, the strong likelihood is that the problem will be solved when they pick up the phone and somebody will walk them through first understanding the problem and then fixing the problem so that the customer is satisfied.